Hi there, this is Andrew. Welcome to another 7-minute meditation. Let's go ahead and get this thing started here. 7 minutes, here we go. Just wanted to share with you about a recent experience I had with regards to, I'm calling this Ecumenical Communion experience. It's not a video about sacramental theology, but it might touch on it briefly here. And I guess I probably should for those who don't know what I mean by sacrament. Sacrament comes from the Greek word mysterion, for mystery or something hidden or secret, or you can say the Latin sacramentum, which is not a Harry Potter spell, but something that means sacred oath. So we know that Catholics observe 7 sacraments. It doesn't take much digging. Like I said, I don't often talk about which denomination I am, but you can quickly find that out because I want this to be a place for Christians of all walks of life, or for those who aren't even followers of Christ who want to kind of check things out. This is meant to be a kind of level playing field, if you will. I don't want you to necessarily get hung up on what denomination I am a pastor in, but that we can focus on some of the things we hold in common, or some of the things, in this case, that are different, that are meaningful. So I said the Catholics observe 7 sacraments. As Protestants, we observe 2. We believe the ones that Jesus instituted and practiced himself are the ones that we should focus on, which are baptism and communion. And then the Greek Orthodox Church views many things as what you might call sacramental, which is kind of a neat way of looking at things, that many things are sacramental in life. This idea that ordinary things can be used to represent mysterious or extraordinary ideas. And these elements that we use for sacraments as Protestants come from nature. We have water for baptism, is essentially all that's needed. And then for Holy Communion, we have bread and wine, or for some, unfermented grape juice, being aware that some folks have struggles with alcoholism and that sort of thing, so we give other options. Is that we call it different things. We call it the Lord's Supper, we call it the Last Supper, we call it Holy Communion. On many tables in many churches, it's in remembrance of me, which partially gets at the idea of what Holy Communion is. But then there's the Eucharist, which is Latin for thanksgiving. We often see Holy Communion, whatever you want to call it, the Lord's Supper, celebrated in more somber ways, but it can also be celebrative. Because one piece I will kind of lift up is that it's not a funeral service for Jesus. Jesus is alive and well. It's ultimately a celebration of his death, burial, and resurrection. So this experience, which brought to light some different things for me, is I was asked to preside over communion at a Community of Hope lay chaplain training. I'm actually, having taken the class, was taking it as a pastor to learn more about pastoral care, but most of the folks in the room, except for myself and a pastor of another denomination, were the only pastors there. Most of the folks were what we call laity, or those who are not clergy, ordained, or certified, or whatever it is in your particular denomination or system of doing things. So anyhow, we were asked to, I was asked to lead the closing communion, and then the person leading realized, oh, we have another pastor in the room from a different background. So we talked for a little bit, and he quickly came to realize he didn't understand exactly the way we do things in my particular denomination. I was probably more familiar with his because I grew up that in a certain fashion of taking communion that was similar to his. It was a beautiful moment. Because we got to experience communion with one another in some different ways, and even talk about what that meant. In my particular setting, we in this denomination, in this area of the denomination at least, we practice what is called intinction. So I just want to talk about not necessarily the theology, but the neat elements behind that touch on theology, what we do with communion. Intinction is where we receive a piece of bread, usually I like to hold it up like this and make eye contact. This is the body of Christ broken for you, and then hold up a cup. This is the blood of Christ shed for you, and the person can dip it and then consume it. Well, my friends, I have another friend who says this idea of no rip and dip. We receive God's grace, we receive Holy Communion, we don't tear it off ourselves. Yet there are some that identify with that idea of I have, in my sin, broken Christ's body, so that tearing it off, and possibly the disciples passed it around the table, and therefore they would have torn off a piece of the unleavened bread when Jesus instituted it. So some people may have a good reason for rip and dip, but I like the idea that we receive grace, and it's not something that we take, because that's what God's ultimate gift is. Then there are those who have individual wafers or crackers and in individual cups that also come forward and receive those things. Then there are the churches, and I've been in them, where you pass around the crackers or a piece of the bread, and everybody waits and they consume it together in unison. And then they do the same thing with the little cups, which is also a beautiful thing. All this is just to say is it's neat to observe different backgrounds. As a matter of fact, if you're not Catholic and you can go into a Catholic church, you can receive a blessing, but you can't receive communion, you can do one of these. And there goes the time, but we'll just wrap it up here. It's kind of neat to be able to experience that moment where we celebrate open communion in my denomination, where there's a moment to say I can't receive, is also meaningful, if that makes any sense. But the last piece is to say what we did in this group that was a beautiful thing is I served the pastor of another denomination the bread and the cup in the way that we typically in my denomination do that, and then we went around the circle. So there's yet another way where we can each serve one another, and then we ultimately prayed the Lord's Prayer together. So that's just a few reflections, not necessarily anything super deep about the sacrament of Holy Communion or what that meant in this particular setting. So thanks for checking things out, and don't forget to click that like button, that bell button, all those different buttons down there to continue to see things on this channel. Thanks so much, and God bless you.